Okay, seems like we have a few folks already. So let's get started. My name is Grace Peralta Beasley. I am a Senior Customer Programs Manager at MCE. I oversee our multifamily energy efficiency programs, and we're here to share with you today about what we have to offer, how can we help your properties save energy and save some money too. So with that, first slide, please. Just going over a few housekeeping items for today for our webinar. Just so you know, this webinar is being recorded. We want to make sure that we have it as a resource after the call. So we will have it. It will be sent out to everyone after the webinar, everybody who registered. It will also be on our MCE website as one of the resources. So if you know somebody who couldn't make it today, we'll make this presentation available. Please make sure to drop your questions in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. We will be having the presentation, so along the presentations, if you happen to have any questions, just make sure to add it there, and we will have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar where we will answer all of your questions. Next slide. And these will be your presenters for today. Grace Peralta, that's me. Priya Cortez from the Association for Energy Affordability, or AEA, and Brent Wiley from MCE. He's also a Senior Customer Programs Manager who works with our electric vehicle programs. As you see, AEA is here. We, for our multifamily energy efficiency programs, we work with AEA as our technical implementer. So she'll be talking to you about our energy efficiency programs and Brett about our EV offerings. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background of who MCE is for those who don't know. Just for everybody joining us today, the hope is that we have a lot of property owners joining us so we can go over the programs, and sometimes folks don't know who MCE is. So next, please. MCE is a community choice aggregator, or CCA. We are a local non-for-profit government agency that was formed by law passed by the state of California. And the idea is to give you another option of where you can receive your power. So we're a default service provider. It's an opt-out model. So immediately when your city or your county joins our service area, you will be an MCE customer. And what we take on, basically none of the experience changes for you, but what we take on as a CCA is the generation service. So where your power is coming from, and we're making sure that we're providing you with clean energy sources. Next, please. And so this is kind of like how the electric service works for you. Like I said before, we focus on the source. We have contracts with different clean energy, clean power resources in the state of California, mainly locally. And then the delivery is the same with PG&E. If you still have an issue with the power lines, you will contact them, and your bill is also from PG&E. And then there's the customer, all of you who benefit from the renewables that we procure for you. Next, please. And this is just a big shot of our service area. We service the four Bay Area counties: Marin, Napa, Solano, and Contra Costa, and we have over 500,000 accounts and over 1 million customers. Next, please. And then I wanted to share with you our mission. So we strive to confront the climate crisis by eliminating fossil fuel greenhouse gas emissions, producing renewable energy, and creating equitable community benefits. And our vision is to lead California to an equitable, clean, affordable, and reliable energy economy by serving as a model for community-based renewable energy, energy efficiency, and cutting-edge clean tech products and programs. So it is with that commitment that we offer programs like this one. We don't any revenue that comes from people's bills go back to programs like this one. And we also receive ratepayer funding from the California Public Utilities Commission to offer these programs to you. Next. So with that, we have our community programs, and next, those are the ones that we'll be talking to you about today. We will go over the Multifamily Energy Savings Program, or MFES, the Low-Income Families and Tenants LIFT pilot program, and our MCE EV program. And with that, I'll pass it over to Priya to go over our Multifamily Energy Savings programs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priya, as Grace mentioned, and I will be talking about MCE's Multifamily Energy Savings Program, MFES, and the Low Income Families and Tenants Program, LIFT. Both programs are MCE's multifamily energy efficiency programs, and they are pretty similar, but there are, in terms that they both have energy efficiency upgrades and electrification upgrades, but there are a few differences which I will touch on later in this presentation. So what are the benefits in participating in MCE's multifamily energy efficiency programs? The first is that we, AEA, offer technical assistance for the program. So we are with properties every step of the way, from when they apply to the program to project closeout. We go on site to do a no-cost energy assessment to identify opportunities and recommend upgrades. We also can help properties with soliciting contractor bids and reviewing the bids, as well as reviewing the property's scope of work to make sure it complies with MCE's minimum performance requirements. So we really are there always for any questions throughout the process. There's also, the incentive component of MCE's energy efficiency programs. So there are pretty generous incentives for both energy efficiency upgrades and appliances, as well as for electrification, which is the conversion from gas appliances to electric appliances. And those include incentives for heat pumps. We offer technical assistance as you are going through the electrification process as well. If you have any questions on, the type of heat pump you're selecting, we are there for that process. And lastly, this program allows for program layering. So you can layer with other programs at MCE or other energy efficiency programs in California. We like to act as a single point of contact. So we just want properties to get the best rebates possible for them. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to speak about the MFES program. The MFES program offers cash rebates for electrification, energy, and water saving areas or water saving measures, and focuses on common area measures. It does also have incentives for tenant unit measures, but really focuses on upgrading the common areas. So that's the main difference between MFES and LIFT. This program also offers a no cost component for labor and materials for tenant units on smaller measures such as in-unit LED lighting and low flow fixtures. Next slide, please. So the LIFT program, Low Income Families and Tenants, this program really focuses on the tenant units and tenant serving measures and offers $1,200 per qualifying LIFT unit for energy efficiency upgrades. It also offers an additional $6,000 per unit for electrification, and that depends on the existing conditions, but it is up to $6,000. Next slide, please. So on this screen here are the program measures offered by MFES and LIFT. As you can see, the program measures range from smaller measures like low flow bath aerators, low flow kitchen aerators, in-unit lighting, to higher cost and higher rebate measures such as heat pumps, including ductless mini split heat pumps, heat pump water heaters. And there are also other electrification measures such as induction stoves, and heat pump dryers. I also wanted to point out that MCE does have incentives for the electrification of infrastructure upgrades as well, such as panel upgrades. Next slide. Cool. I wanted to take us through a brief case study on a senior housing property in Marin that completed or went through the program and completed in about mid-2021. So this was a 70-unit senior property that consisted of one building, and it was built in 1987. And the property was 6,133 square feet. Next. The property had several goals and reasons for participating in MCE's programs. The first is that they wanted to modernize and make the units more comfortable while maintaining affordable rent for the residents. They also wanted to update the gas wall furnaces that were original to the building and were pretty aged. And overall, since it was a senior property, they wanted to increase senior safety. Next. So this property utilized 3 of MCE's programs: MCE Lift, MCE MFES, and MCE Healthy Homes. And I wanted to emphasize that the property didn't have to worry about which program, gave which measure. AA really helped the property, focus on what they want to get upgraded. And, we focus on which program is which. The property just really needs to focus on the measures that they want upgraded. So first thing the property did is they wanted to upgrade, in unit for the seniors. So they utilized MCE Lift and upgraded the gas wall furnaces to ductless mini split heat pumps. They also got in-unit LED lighting and upgraded to low flow devices. The property received over $377K from that MCE Lift program and for these upgrades. The property also utilized the MCE MFES program for common area upgrades, including upgrading the exterior and common area lighting to LED, and also adding demand recirculation control to the water heater. The property also ended up using MFES for in-unit upgrades, specifically on upgrading the refrigerators to Energy Star refrigerators, and the property received $10,500 from MFES. Lastly, the property used MCE Healthy Homes, which ran through December 2021. And that program, focused on making properties healthier and safer. And so the property wanted to address trip and fall. So that's why they installed 70 bathroom grab bars in the showers of the seniors units to address this. And the property received $70,000 through that program. Next. Cool. So on this slide here, you can see on the left, the wall furnace has been removed. And as you progress to the right, the ductless mini split heat pump is installed. This is just the indoor component of the heat pump. The outdoor component is not pictured here. Next. So what were the project outcomes? So the first is that residents benefit now from having air conditioning as well as heat. And as we can all, attest, the latest heat wave really shows us that it is important to have air conditioning. The seniors now have bathroom grab bars to prevent trip and fall, which is great. And they, in their units, have energy and water saving appliances, which will help lower their electricity bills. Next. So how does one sign up for MCE's MFES and LIFT programs, and how is a property eligible? So for eligibility, the property must be located in MCE's service area. And as a quick refresher from Grace's presentation, that is Napa County, Contra Costa County, Marin County, and Solano County. And on MCE's homepage at the bottom, you can actually enter your property's zip code and see if it's within MCE's service area. There's also some income requirements for the program. The first is that properties must have a deed restriction showing that they are a low-income property. The next is that properties must show that at least 65% of residents are at the 250% federal poverty level or below. And properties show that through sending us their rent rolls, which include the number of people per household as well as annual income per household, so we can do that verification. And lastly, as part of eligibility, properties are eligible for specific measures as long as they haven't received a rebate for those specific measures by another ratepayer funded energy efficiency program, such as Marin. We can still leverage with Marin, but just for a different set of measures. So you can't get the same rebate twice, if that makes sense. Next, please. Cool. So this is outlined here is the program process. So the first step of the program process is to complete the online application. The link is actually on the next slide, but the online application takes about 5 minutes to complete, and it has some just basic info on the property. After you complete the online application, it actually comes directly to me. So after I review, I will reach out to whoever submitted the applicant and schedule an intake call. On the intake call, we will talk about existing conditions of the property, answer your questions about MCE's MFES and LIFT programs, as well as talk about any pain points related to energy and upgrades that you want at the property. After the intake call, we will schedule a site assessment or an energy assessment. And the purpose of the energy assessment is to understand the existing conditions at the property and find opportunities that can be upgraded. While at the site visit, we sample a set of the tenant units so we can document all the current light fixtures, HVAC, the low flow, or if there's no low flow. So we document whatever is in the tenant units in that sample. And we also visit all exterior and common areas, including laundry room, pool, community rooms, the roof. After the site visit, we put together an energy report, with our findings and our recommendations of what can be upgraded. And we also include the rebates that are available to the property. And after we submit the energy report to the property, we give them some time to review, and then we have a call where we go through our findings with the property. Then the property can determine a scope of work. We can help you with that if you want. And after the property determines the scope of work, they can get into rebate reservation, or, which means that some funds are set aside. Prior to getting into rebate reservation, we often recommend that you have hired a contractor or have bids out. Anyways, after the rebate reservation is set, the property can complete the work. After the work is complete, we'll come on site once more for a verification visit, and then we'll submit the property to MCE for approval. And once it's approved, or the property is approved, they can receive the rebate from MCE within 4 to 6 weeks of approval. And the rebate is in the form of a check. Next, please. Here's the link to the intake form. Feel free to screenshot it, or I can email it to you after if you reach out. And that's it from me. I'm going to pass it now to Brett, who will talk about MCE's EV program.
Thanks, Priya. All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Great. Excellent. Thanks. Well, thanks, Priya, for going over MCE's energy efficiency programs for multifamily housing. Building electrification is very important. And as probably some of you have heard from your residents and even in your own findings, vehicle electrification, transportation electrification is becoming a a rising amenity and desire for multifamily housing as well. So before we really dive into this, I also just want to empathize and understand a lot of you probably haven't heard EV charging as being the top desire from multifamily tenants, and it isn't today. Roughly 4% of all vehicles on the road in our service area are electric. However, about 20% of all new vehicle sales this year are electric. So while there might not be the demand today, we are helping you in our electric transportation programs to anticipate the demand that currently is here and is anticipated to continue to grow and accelerate in the years to come. Next slide. So before diving, back up one more. Before diving into the program and a little primer on electric vehicle 101, I want to put out a poll to everyone. So if whoever's controlling the poll could release that. Simply just want to, if everyone could just list a single choice of what you feel like has been the biggest barrier for you and your properties to adding EV charging. Just a quick vote. Want to get a pulse check from everyone so I can incorporate your answers and talk about them throughout the presentation. All right. And I can't see how many people are responding, but for whoever's controlling the poll, feel free to close it and publish the results whenever you feel like we have enough. All right. Yeah, could you publish those results so we can all see them? Great, thanks so much. So we got some responses in, and yeah, limited demand by residents is one, electrical constraints, and then too many other priorities. We'll talk about all of those in this presentation, and for those that didn't respond, I'm sure there some of these other barriers might have been yours as well. Next slide. So getting into electric vehicle 101, I want to make sure everyone's on the same page before diving into the program. Right now, gas is very expensive. This is a snapshot from even, I guess, about a month and a half ago. The average gas prices throughout California, including just one county of our 4-county service area, Marin. Gas prices are very high, but a lot of times we don't know how to compare the value or the difference in price between gas that you would put in your vehicle compared to electricity that you could charge your vehicle with. Next slide. And there are a lot of savings potentials. So I'll dive into that into 1 second. But one of the savings opportunities that is really not considered a lot is the reduced maintenance and increased uptime from switching from a gas vehicle to an electric vehicle. One of the core reasons that is that there's only 20 parts in an average electric vehicle that puts the vehicle in motion, compared to about over 2,000 parts for an internal combustion or ICE vehicle. So there are a lot of maintenance cost reductions when people switch from a gas to an electric vehicle. Next slide, next. And then diving into the fuel savings. So if you are driving a gas vehicle, you're spending on average, and this was even a snapshot from a while ago, that gas is about 200% more expensive than buying 100% renewable electricity and charging your vehicle from MCE. And so the savings component is really important for vehicle owners, but it's also really important for property managers and people that are offering this amenity to your residents. Because if people can save on transportation costs, they'll have greater affordability in their homes to pay for rent and other needs in their daily lives. Next slide. All right, so we're going to dive into the levels of charging. So if you have an outlet that you can plug your phone into, then you have an outlet that you can plug your vehicle into. It's a common misconception you need a fancy contraption to plug in and charge any electric vehicle. A 120-volt outlet will do that for you. However, for multifamily property residents, that's not as easy as single-family residents. Single-family household usually has access to a garage or an outdoor port to plug in. Not true for multifamily. And of course, the charging environment and where those meters are tied to is also not as simple. So we'll get into how those complexities are dealt with in our program. But level 1 charging is very easy, simple for folks to do, and very common. About the average Bay Area resident drives their vehicle 30 miles round trip daily. So if you plug in your car overnight, you're getting more than enough miles you need for most of your daily trips. Next, click. Level 2 is the next step. This is about charging through a 240-volt outlet, and you get about 20 miles of range for every hour that you're plugged in, 4 times as much from a level 1. And next, click. Level 3 or DC fast charging are the ones that are more ubiquitous and ones you've probably seen in public. These are about 80%. These will charge your vehicle in about 80% of the way in about 30 minutes. For the purposes, though, of this presentation, we're really going to focus on level 1 and level 2 charging, which is most applicable for multifamily housing. Next slide. So this is a snapshot. I'm sure we'll provide the slides out for participants afterwards. So I wanted you to have this, but you can see the different voltage and amperage requirements, and also the mileages that the highest mileage range that could be charged in a given hour plugged into these 3 types of charging. Next slide. We'll dive a little bit deeper on each level of charging and the expected costs. So again, all EVs come with a level 1 charger, but if you're looking for cost recovery mechanisms, including charging your residents for the electricity and other transaction fees, we really recommend commercial stations, which are what are covered in our program. A level 1 charger station is roughly about $650 for the hardware, and then $1,000 to $1,700 for the install. And again, just uses a standard 120-volt outlet to plug in the hardware. Next slide. Level 2 charging, much more common in our program. This is something that whether you have a single-family home or commercial property, including multifamily housing, there would be some cost for the hardware and the installation. The average total cost for every installed level 2 charging port, essentially 1 plug, would be about $6,500. So just something to consider when we dive into the incentives and rebates. Next slide. And I just added this slide on DC fast charging to show you both the use cases, which are not multifamily housing, and also the costs and relevance. The average cost, total cost for a DC fast charger per plug would be around $70,000 to $100,000. This is why there's a lot of federal funding out here to create a national electric vehicle infrastructure highway system across the country, up and down, east to west, but not applicable really for multifamily housing. All right, next slide. So we're about to dive into MCE's EV charging program, which is for workplaces and multifamily properties, as well as long dwell sites like ferry terminals and park and rides. But for multifamily housing properties, you are eligible in this program if you are an MCE customer, if you have a property that's 4 or more units, and that you use the approved hardware and qualified vendors in our program. Those are the 3 requirements. Next slide. Some of the benefits of this program, our rebate on average covers about 50% of the total cost of installation. So as I mentioned before, the average cost of a level 2 charger total installed is about $6,500. Our maximum base incentive in our program for level 2 chargers is about $3,500. A little more though if you're in some Contra Costa County zip codes. So just something to consider on the price, and potentially is what's left over after you install. And we can help you find other sources of funding to even close the total out-of-pocket cost for the project. In addition to incentives, we also have free technical assistance which will help you do a site assessment, a load study, as well as provide a planning report, and also integrate other layered programs into this, like our low carbon fuel standard program, which would help you to monetize the charging and get quarterly revenue from that. We also have a educational and engagement program for residents and tenants for multifamily properties that go through our charging program. So this is a great opportunity to provide a way for us to educate and engage your tenants so they know the asset that you just invested in, as well as help them get access to all of these incentives. For the average low to moderate income household, they could get up to $13,750 to purchase towards an electric vehicle. Next slide. Here's the breakdown of our EV charging rebate offerings. The technical assistance is free to participants who come into the program, cost that MCE bears, and provides you that resource. For the rebates and incentives themselves, they're broken down here. There's a lot of details here. We'll send this out afterwards. The basics to know, essentially, there's a $750 per port installed rebate for level 1, $3,000 base rebate for level 2. Both of those get additional adders if your property is on or opts up to MCE's 100% renewable electricity deep green service. You would get then $825 per port installed for level 1 and $3,500 per port installed for level 2. We also have all these other additional and stackable incentives that if you're interested, we can help you navigate and find out what your maximum eligibility is. But for example, for Contra Costa County zip codes, you could stack on additional $2,000 per level 2 port. If you're in Napa, there's still some funding available in Cal EVIP. You could get an additional $5,500 per level 2 port. And if any of you are operating affordable multifamily housing throughout our service area, we have some low to no cost programs launching in November, later this month, and in early 2023 that we'd love to work with you on. So in the chat, if you could just type in your name, if you in your portfolio have affordable multifamily housing, we'd love to follow up with you more explicitly around those programs when they launch. Next slide. Here are some rebate details. A lot of this was covered in the slide before, but this is an example of the average total project cost and how that breaks down with the incentives. One thing important to note, in our program, there is a min and max for the number of ports installed. For level 1, that's a min max of 4 to 40 ports installed per site, and 2 to 20 ports of level 2 installed per site. If you have a multifamily housing portfolio that's multiple locations, or within a property have multiple sites, then this is on a per site basis, not a total portfolio basis. So you can see here with our, just as an example, looking at the middle column, looking at our average total project cost, you can bring down those out-of-pocket costs down to about $3,000 with our incentives. Even more if you layer additional incentives on it, like for example, charge of Contra Costa, you would bring your total out-of-pocket cost per level 2 port installed of $1,000. Next slide. And again, this is a more elaborated and just talks about a typical multifamily project. And our program has been about 4 level 2 ports, and just sort of breaks it down where your total out-of-pocket cost would be without the incentives and where they would be afterward. One really important thing to note about these out-of-pocket costs are these are the project costs for the installation. There can be ongoing costs once the charging is installed. The biggest one, though, is going to be electricity. And all of the chargers that are eligible in our program are networked. And by network, that means they have cost recovery. So you can charge your residents for the usage of your chargers, and every month get a check back so that you can pay your utility bill on time and be made whole, and potentially even more if you wanted to put additional 5 to 10% adder to recover some of your upfront project costs for that charging. So this is a way that I know probably some of your properties, people are stringing charging lines out of their windows or across lots into available level 1 or 120 volt or 240 volt ports. These have all the hardware in our program has cost recovery measures so that ongoing costs are either minimized or brought to zero. Next slide. Here's a timeline for our program. The average project from reserving the rebate to site verification is about 8 to 12 months. A lot of that time's in the permitting process and really up to the property too, and how fast you want to move forward. But the first step is to really have a conversation with MCE. I'm going to post a link of this program into the chat and would encourage you to look at it. Maybe someone who is not presenting, if you could post that to all the attendees, that would be great. But the first step is to really have a conversation with us and to fill out an interest form. That is on our website. And okay, thanks for the time check, Grace. You'll reserve a rebate after you've learned about the program and deemed being eligible. If you want to do technical assistance, there's a planning report and all the other benefits of the technical assistance that I talked about before. Then you would select an approved hardware and software vendor to work with. And once the project is installed, you would do a remote site verification, including taking photos, and the rebate check would be sent in about 30 days. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm going to drop the interest form in the chat right now. Love to have you, if you're interested in EV charging for any reason, please fill out that interest form. You can direct any questions to info@mcecleanenergy.org and also go to the EV charging program page that I also dropped in the chat. And that's all for me. And I think that's all for us, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brett, Priya, Grace, for your great presentations today. We do have one current question. So this will be for both Priya and Brett. The programs that were discussed today, which of those are only for low-income multifamily housing? And maybe Priya, do you want to start first with MFES and LIFT?
Yeah, so MFES and LIFT are both only for low-income housing.
And for EV charging, it's for any workplace, multifamily property, or long dwell site or public site. There are just added incentives if you have designated affordable housing.
Thanks both. Thomas, I hope that answered your question. So we have this time now to answer any questions folks on the webinar have, so feel free to add them into the Q&A section. Here's another one here. So Priya, maybe you can help answer this and I can help as well. How does the multifamily program, or Grace as well, how does the multifamily program coordinate with the ESA program for multifamily properties?
Yeah, I think Grace, could you take this one?
Yeah, no problem. So we are through the LIFT program. I'll make a distinction to when we say that both MFES and LIFT service low-income properties. There's actually a little bit of a difference. So LIFT serves the 200% of the federal poverty line, which is 250%, which is similar to ESA. However, the MFES, we just work with deed restricted properties in general. Is way more open and flexible because the idea is that anyone who cannot qualify within any unit that cannot qualify for LIFT can be served by MFES, and that way we can cover both properties or both units, all of the units within the property. Now, in terms of coordination, we are in communication with the team. We're actually talking to the team that's going to work on the future. I don't know if it's going to be called ESA as well, but the whole building program that they're working on. And we are now waiting for the next check-in once they have their advice letter approved. We are in communication. We coordinate, especially when it comes to support with electric rate switches, but that's about it. Our strategy is a little bit different than ESA too. We work with the property owners directly, and we do like a whole building approach versus a direct install only. But yeah, we're in communication with the ESA team as well.
You know, I think I'll add, and Grace, you touched on this, is a project may be eligible for ESA or LIFT, but just like you mentioned, the measure offerings are different between the two in many cases. And so, on a lot of projects, I think, assuming they'd be eligible for both programs, there's always the optimization pathway where, ESA can help support the measures that are best suited for that program, and then LIFT can support the measures that are best suited for that program. They're somewhat different in the measures that each program offers currently. So folks are welcome to still submit any questions if they have any, or clarifications on any of the answers that were just provided. We can wait a few more minutes. I wouldn't want to prematurely end the webinar, but if folks want to type anything in. Oh, we got a new one. Oh, and it's a good one. From Jackie Thompson. The management company for my condo home says they are working with the city of Richmond on installing EV charging stations for our 4 condo buildings. Is there a way to verify that they are applying for this program with MCE? So I'll go ahead and post this question live, and maybe Brett, that might be a good question for you to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe we can follow up. If you want to just reach out to me, we can double check to make sure they're in our program. We're working with a lot of multifamily properties across our service area, including in Richmond. But yeah, we want to talk offline because we don't really, until a customer completes a project, we're not allowed to just announce who's in the pipeline or who's underway. So let's just have a conversation offline about if your property is in the program or not. And if it's not, we'd love to get it enrolled into the program.
Yeah, good point. And maybe could you just go back a couple of slides that had Brett's contact information on there? So Jackie can get Brett's email right there at the top and reach out to him to discuss your condo building. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any additional questions come in. However, we can wait maybe 10, 15 more seconds. If anyone does have questions following the webinar, we have the contact information that was provided before, so you can speak directly with any or all of the panelists, and they can get right into the details on those questions that you might have. And with that, maybe I'll think we can probably end the webinar, but thank you everyone for attending. I hope you found it informative, and we look forward to working with you all on your multifamily properties.